Google. Yes. Hello, everybody. I'm here with Dean Esmay.
Hello, I'm Dean Esmay.
Yes, that is Dean Esmay. And yeah, this is just a conversation with Dean Esmay, kind of like the one that I had, yesterday with
Hannah.
Yeah, with Hannah. Oh my God. Wait, no, that was 2 days ago. I'm losing it today. I don't know. It's been a little.
Hannah, I didn't get a chance to listen to the interview, but Hannah is such a smart lady, and I'll say it now if she's listening, she's like my favorite Vulcan chick of all time. I love her to death. She's so logical, she's so thoughtful, but she's also kind and incredibly knowledgeable. You never want to ask that woman. Well, let me put it to you this way: if that woman ever challenges you, if that woman challenges something you're talking about, look out, you're probably wrong.
Lay down on the ground, give up, just submit, it's done, you lost, okay.
But that's all right. I'm the more kind, sweet, gentle, and cuddly MRA. So you can talk to me now.
just nice and furry, someone who you can snuggle up to.
I'm all chubby and furry, and you can just squeeze me like a big old teddy bear while I tell you that you are a feminist and therefore part of a hate movement. Just kidding.
That's such a kind thing to do. Just like, oh, hey, how are you? You're a part of a hate group.
Well, if somebody's in a hate movement like feminism is, and it is, you are doing them a kindness to let them know, oh, dude, you are lying. You're repeating lines from a hate movement.
And even if it's a hate movement, you should probably get out before you get sucked into it too much.
Well, exactly. And I'm sorry if they don't like hearing that. Or, you can just stay where you are and listen to Macho Man Steve Chives tell you what to think.
Oh, Steve Chives. Steve Chives. What a guy. What a guy.
I'm sorry. You probably have actual questions rather than me just snarking.
Oh, no. This isn't an interview. It's just more of a conversation. Though if you want an actual question, I'll give you one. I mean, I know that you've...
let me premise this with a statement. You mind if I premise this with a little statement?
Oh, sure.
I am a men's rights activist. Yet if you go out onto Twitter or some of the other social media, you will notice I spend a lot of time spanking feminists, i.e. attacking feminists. And you may think that is all I do. It is not. So this conversation, we could spend an hour talking about feminists if you wanted, or we could talk about other things entirely. Totally up to you.
I prefer to avoid the topic of feminism mostly on my channel because it tends to be less controversial if I talk more about rights. Because as much as people like to say, like to bring this up, and as much as I occasionally disagree with it, yes, I recognize that not all feminists are like it, are like that. That doesn't change that a good portion of them are, and that they're given, and that those who aren't like that are often the ones who are silenced and having their voice taken away, like, Christina Hoff Sommers. The moment that she stood up and stopped acting like, quote unquote, that, she was, cast down, and yeah.
Yeah, no, actually, I was old enough. I bought Christina Hoff Sommers' book, Who Stole Feminism, 20 some odd years ago when it came out. And
damn, son.
I've watched as they just pilloried and marginalizing her, and she's holding on to that label, thinking she can rescue it, and that's fine. We sort of know each other, and we're not working companions or anything, and she'll tell you she feels that it's like, I really just want to save this. I don't. And criticism of feminism is, most of the criticisms I see are valid these days. I want it to get better, so good for her, but I think it's a lost cause. So what are you interested in regarding men's rights issues?
Well, here's the big question. I first of all, you were the first person whom I had heard of and didn't personally know who started watching my videos, so that was a pretty big deal. And so the question is, I know that you've commented on one of the videos that I made where it was the why to be an MRA videos. So my question for you, why be an MRA? Like, what do you think is the most important reason?
Why be an MRA? That's an interesting question because that is almost like seeing, why do you want to be hated? But let's get to it. We spent time talking about feminism, and I'm doing it again, but I'll tell you why. Because while men and boys face some really crucial issues, and it is not the fault of feminists that all that is there, they are the #1 and most easily identified source that is busy not just ignoring, but marginalizing and minimizing men's suffering, or even denying that it exists. If they didn't do any of that, we probably wouldn't have an issue. But they keep it up with this toxic masculinity lie, the men beat and rape and oppress their women lie, which is a racist lie, and etc. When one of my biggest goals here, actually, let me just tell you this way: my biggest goal is an MRA, and mind you, there are MRAs you don't see. There's a lot of MRAs you don't see. You see me, and you see a few others of us. We have opted to be public figures, and we have opted to take the contentious, rough and tumble choice to engage in the marketplace of ideas and talk about these things. There are other MRAs in all 50 states and in Canada and the United States who are working on legislation, who are working on court reform. There have been for a long time now. And they lose a lot, or they'll make a short-term game in their state or their town or in this court case or whatever. Like, I know the National Coalition for Men, biggest, oldest men's rights organization on the planet, probably, just in terms of membership, and they've been around since the 70s, and they win in court all the time, and you just never hear from them. One of the conclusions we made, and actually I do, people will sit there and say Paul Elam's a cult leader, which is nonsensical. I'll just say it right now. Paul Elam is my friend. He fucks up sometimes. He makes mistakes sometimes. He's an asshole sometimes. Once in a while, I've even told him to go fuck himself. And he told me to go fuck myself. And we were really mad too. Yeah, he's a human. That's exactly it. But I credit him, and it's why I do the work on A Voice for Men now. When I first ran into A Voice for Men, I was cringing and terrified because they're right about almost all of this. You know, maybe there's this on this little bit I can argue with here, this on the other, but like the bulk of it, it's like there is nothing arguable about what they're saying on A Voice for Men. They're just so mean about it, and because we are. Or we can be most of the time. What Paul figured out, and it's what I think he's right about now, if I didn't think he were right, I wouldn't be doing it, is people have been working on this and talking about it in really polite tones for at least 20 years, if not 30 or 40. And what happens to them? Nobody hears from them. Nobody even knows who they are. I know some of them, but you don't. And which is not your failing. The press, the popular culture has marginalized and dismissed them for decades.
Oh, no, I'll admit it. I was listening to you and I'm going like, wait, who?
Yeah.
Like, I didn't even know that there was a National Coalition for Men. I'm pretty active in the men's rights movement. In fact, I didn't even know that.
It is a nonprofit movement. It is a nonprofit organization that was founded in 1977, I believe. They were originally called the National Council of Free Men. About half of them were feminist men, and the other half were conservative men who were not comfortable with a lot of the stuff coming out of feminism. That's how they got started almost 30 years ago. Yeah, you never hear about them because they got mocked and lied about and marginalized and dismissed constantly in the press and the wider culture. So what you'll usually find is that we're not saying anything different than they are. We're saying it loud. We're saying it abrasive. We're saying it apologetic. And by the way, when you don't like it, we double down and get more obnoxious until you submit or go away. And by the way, going away is submission. And that is because it needs to be possible in the common culture to do a few things. Number one, It needs to be acceptable to just say, I'm not a feminist, and I don't owe feminists anything. That's number one. Number two, men and boys have issues. They have rights and areas where they really are legitimately, measurably, demonstrably suffering from civil and human rights, either outright violation or what anybody should be able to just call marginalization and dismissal. That's happening at every level of the culture. And it needs to be acceptable in the culture for people to say, why are you doing this to boys? Why are you saying these hateful things? Why are you making up these lies about rape? Why are you making up these lies about domestic violence? And it needs to be acceptable to do that. And we're here to do it. And so I said this years ago, and I'll say it again. I don't care if people don't like me or the way I say things. I really don't. If enough people say, well, he's right about that, I just don't like the way he said it, good. You know why?
It's the argument that matters.
That's right. Walk away thinking I'm the biggest shit stain in the world. Did the idea stick in your head? I win. And that's a hard choice to make, but it is the only thing I have found in decades of watching this. You sound young, so I'm betting since longer than you've been alive. But either way, I've seen it.
You're not wrong.
Nothing else works except getting in their faces and making them defensive. Is that comfortable for me? No. My actual personality is 180 degrees. From that, you see me out there writing some shit, and I am brutal. You know, I call it out. I call people bigots. I call them hate mongers. I call them liars. And when they squawk, I double down. And I identify their hatred even more. Frankly, whether you're a male or a female, you're repeating hateful lies. If I can make you cry, I win. And yes, I really am that nasty. Because what you're saying about men and boys is nasty. You're directing that shit not just at me, but at my son, at my nephews, at my cousins, at my father. Fuck you. You're going to talk some shit, you're going to hear from me. And I don't like that. I'd rather be living in a society where we could actually make progress by being calm and reasonable and bringing the best available evidence and then let people decide for themselves. I would really like to live that life because that is how I prefer to talk to people. But when we're seeing real horrible things happening and people are shrugging and dismissing and they're not listening, then I'm going to do whatever it takes to make them listen. And if that even includes screaming, I'll scream. That's why I do what I do. And then I know all these women and all these men who are much more calm and polite, not just at the National Coalition for Men, but there's also Leading Women for Shared Parenting, Fathers for Justice. There are at least 2 or 3, family court reform groups in every state of the U.S. A lot of those people talk to me, but I'll never identify them in public. I know people who work in courts who are men's rights activists, and I can't tell you who they are or they'll be targeted. But if you ever do get the feeling, I know I'm just going off on a long monologue here, but if you ever get the feeling that men's rights activists aren't doing anything, they're just bitching on the internet, just remember, that's the 1% of us who are dedicated to cultural change and to inserting, like a virus, into the culture. And I just called it a culture, a virus, I don't care. The idea that it is acceptable for men to put themselves first for the first time in ever. It is acceptable for men to say, why should I do that? Why should I believe that? Why should I accept that? Those things need to be acceptable. And if I have to take a few years of abuse to make it safe for you to do that in polite company in the real world, I won.
Dude, that was like the most epic speech I've ever heard.
Okay.
Yeah, that was actually pretty amazing right there. But
really?
here's something that I really like that you brought up. People like to say that the MRM is just bitching on the internet and stuff. Well, you know what? At every level, at every movement, before it becomes big, it has to start out small. You know, whether it's the civil rights movement, you know, and like you said, you don't really get places by being polite all the time. If people refuse to listen to you, you have guys like D.W.B. Boyce, who in the early stages of the civil rights movement, he was polite. Yeah, do you think anything happened in the 20s? Not much happened in the 20s. No, it took people to be impolite, stand up and call people out and tell it as it is. You know, as much as being polite can help, it has its limit, and at some point you just got to stand up and be honest and tell people this is how it is, this is how it needs to be, and this is how we can get there.
It's really amusing to me. One of the more nasty hit pieces on the men's rights movement was by a woman named Mariah Blake, I think, who was writing for Mother Jones. Now, she and the rest of the Mother Jones crew dismissed us as a bunch of trolls. Just shit-stirring trolls who had nothing really valuable to say, or the usual, well, these are real issues, but these guys are just so wrong in their ways of going about it. By the way, every time someone says that, I just got another point, like 3 points every time someone says that, because they just admitted that the issues are right.
And that's what really counts.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Because the next question will be, well, you admitted that they were right. What are you going to do about it? I win every time they do that. But anyway, she writes this thing calling us trolls who don't do anything and all that. And Mother Jones was formed in the 1970s and is named after a woman named Mary Harris Jones. She was beloved of people and called Mother Jones. And what she did with her life was she spent time helping men who worked in dangerous jobs like coal mines, get better working conditions for themselves so they could be safer and their families could be safer, and they, as workers in dangerous, tough, shitty jobs, would have better lives for themselves and their families. She was a champion of the working man. Now, if you're a real modern guy, you could also say, well, she's also a champion of that old-fashioned notion that men will provide for women and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, well, guess what? It was the 1800s. That was how people needed to survive. So she did, but she spent most of her life caring about men. She lived in the mid-1800s. When the question of women's suffrage was put to her, she said she thought it was just the dumbest thing she'd ever heard. She saw no reason why women should need the vote. What the fuck for? Her best quote was, "You don't need the vote to raise hell." And she spent her entire life raising hell. She didn't give a crap about the suffrage question at all. Why? It wasn't relevant to anything she was doing, and she was busy turning the entire United States upside down. Another woman who was like that was named Carrie Nation. You'll go look up Carrie Nation. She never had the vote, and yet she managed to get the Constitution of the United States amended anyway. All right, so
what's her name? The one who did all the prison
Carrie
reform.
Nation. Oh, I can't remember who did
the
reform.
I don't. Yeah, I know. I can't remember what her name is, but she was the one who really coined the term mental illness.
Oh, okay. I'll buy that. And yeah. I'm not saying she shouldn't have had the vote. That's a moot question. But she knew women were powerful. She fucking was powerful. And rabble-rousing was what she did for the living. So, you know, what you've got to assume is that somebody like the people like Mariah and the people working at Mother Jones now, what are they really saying? Anybody who disagrees with them is a troll, a lowlife. You know, one of those stupid rabble-rousers who goes out there and gets the everyday people all agitated.
One of those stupid rabble-rousers like the person we're named after.
Like the troll, the professional lifelong troll, Mary Harris Jones, you mean? Or was it Mary? Yeah, Mary Harris Jones. Rabble-rousing in the 21st century is on the internet, folks. That's, you don't get big crowds protesting in front of government buildings now. It's done on the internet, because the internet is where ideas spread. The internet is where ideas will be tested and discarded or accepted. I've been corrected on things I got wrong many times, and it was often somebody on the internet who corrected me. Know what I usually did or tried to do? Say, oh, man, I got to rethink my position because you just blew me away with an argument or a fact I couldn't explain away. This is what the internet does for us. And so that's another layer of the whole, what do you mean we don't do anything? Well, A, I'm not the only MRA on the planet, Buttercup. My job is to help change the culture and stir up shit. It's what I do. And there are actually people working on things like court reform and legislative change who will privately admit they love reading things like A Voice for Men, but in public will go ahead and fucking condemn us as those crazy fuck MRAs. And you know what? I'm good with all that too.
Hey, as long as people are getting the idea in their heads, that's what matters. It's
That's
like
correct.
how it's like I mean, I'm obviously not a politician or a lawyer or anything like that.
Good for you. That makes you a better human being.
Well, here's the thing. I never really did much on the internet until recently. I mean, my channel, before I made all the videos private, I used to do freaking gaming videos on the same channel. Still was MrMinibagel. All the videos are gone, but it used to just be gaming.
Okay.
And yeah, and I would spend all my time. I was still an MRA. I was just an MRA in private. I'd spend all my time writing to the state government. I would write towards,
I've done that.
Yeah, and I still do that occasionally. The problem is that they don't listen. Like, for example, in my state, North Carolina, there's this guy named Tom Tillis. I cannot stand Tom Tillis. I'm not going to get into that, but I don't want to make this into a trash Tom Tillis hour. I will have those soon, though, probably. I hope so. But yeah, so the first thing I did was write about circumcision to him and why I'm against it, and sent some scientific things. Yeah, that was my first mistake, trying to send facts to a member of the GOP. And
you don't have to say GOP, you can just say politician, but go ahead.
Politician, especially a real hardcore GOP member. I can't think of a single one. I can't think of a single politician who would really care, except some of those few who you've never heard of, probably. I've never heard of, probably. You know?
Oh, I can tell you what the key is to getting politicians to move, but go ahead and finish your story first.
Well, here's the thing, is that there was a bot that sent a message that said, I received it, I am reading it, and I will reply. Like, guaranteed, I will reply. And I never got a reply. And I was like, hey, well, whatever. Shit happens. So I just kept on writing him, and I kept on writing him, and I never got a single reply because, I don't know. I mean, well, politicians are liars. They make empty promises. Shocker. But, you know, and that's when I realized that one person, one crazy weird kid on the internet writing at his senator over and over again, that's not going to change anything. But you know what could change things? 250 crazy kids writing to their senator on the internet. Or 300, 400, 500. That can make change.
It actually can, although with a politician it's a little harder. But yeah, you got the idea. That you writing to a guy, you and 3 of your friends writing to a guy or a girl, or an elected politician, or even a bureaucrat. That politician, if he even has time, because he gets hundreds of letters a day, is going to be like, okay, this is one letter on this one issue, and I may agree with it 100%, but the voters in my district are never going to accept this. Crunch, 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 into the trash with it. Don't even respond because you're asking. That's what the politician's thinking, right? Do not even respond. Anything you say may be used against you. Hardly anybody else is writing me about this. Fuck it. It's exactly like there's 3 people outside my office protesting. Well, I'll ignore them. So, 100 years ago, during the civil rights movement, this is going to sound weird, but this is historically the truth. It used to be very easy to do demonstrations in front of a business or in front of a government office. And in the 1960s, because that was so common, corporate and government architects began changing the way they designed buildings and the access to them. And so pretty much any big building that's been designed in the last 50 years that a government or a big corporation has, you will notice they are typically in office parks where it is very difficult to get to them without driving, and there is no convenient place to put up a demonstration of people. They did that on purpose. Corporate and government offices did that on purpose in the 60s and 70s. So why don't you see protests anymore very often? Because there's no good place to do it that anybody will notice you.
Well, there's one. It's the Supreme Court, and that place is usually full.
How old is that building? Thank you. Yep, yeah, there you go. It is not situated in a place that's difficult to get to and from by foot. Most buildings are nowadays. So it's near difficult. It's near impossible to do public protests.
And even so, like with the Supreme Court, I'd have to wedge my way in between 4 other protests about 4 different things.
That's there's right.
There's always people.
So expressing political dissent from the status quo, and Republicans and Democrats are both the status quo in the United States. Don't kid yourself.
Oh, yeah.
The people who want you to just get rid of the GOP and elect Democrats are just as bad as the ones saying get rid of the Democrats and elect the GOP. They're the establishment. And when you are anti-establishment, to get under their skin and make them pay attention to you, you do it on the internet. That's how it happens in the 21st century.
Well, that's what I'm trying to do whenever I talk about how I want to reclaim the term liberal or progressive or whatever, because it means anti-establishment, and that's not what the current people who are calling themselves liberals are. They're very pro-establishment on the left.
They're incredibly establishmentarian, aren't they? I mean, just incredible. Now, I got a lot of bad things I could say about Republicans and the right-wingers, and they all get all hurt when I do sometimes. But liberals, especially the certain types of liberals, they're like pretending they have this false veneer of moral authority, like we're the good people who help people. No, you're not. No, you're not. You're part of the same establishment, and in some ways you're worse than the GOP. You really do suck just as much as them. You've just got your own special kind of suckitude. You both suck. And that gets back to what is the actual way to get action out of a politician? Well, usually they have to be hit from multiple angles. I will give somebody, if you tell me where you live, I'll tell you where the men's rights or fathers' rights or court reform or anti-circumcision or whatever they are, I'll tell you where they are in your state, because they're not that fucking hard to find. So the real question is, who's out there changing the wider culture and making it safe to just say something like, what do you mean rape culture? What the fuck are you talking about? And when they come in and accuse you of being a rape apologist or whatever, you need to not reason with them, because their idea is not based in reason in the first place. We don't live in a culture that normalizes women of rape. If they keep insisting that we do, call them out as bigots, because that's what they are. Bigots and liars.
Yeah, I always have one response if someone calls me a rape apologist or something. It's like, I'm not a rape apologist. There you go. That's as simple as it gets.
No, at this point, I go further. I said, no, you're a rape liar. You're a rape liar. You believe, and furthermore, you're probably a racist, because if you believe in rape culture, you believe
lynch mobs.
you believe in lynch mobs. Furthermore, you accept the prejudice. You believe we live in a patriarchy. You believe we live in a rape culture. So what you mean is Hispanic men routinely beat and rape their women. That's what you meant, right? You meant the darkies, the Negroes, the blacks. You mean they regularly beat and rape their women. Would you like to tell me why that's not racist? Go ahead, snowflake.
That's what I try to tell them. It's even if they don't necessarily use that phraseology, they'll never admit that that's what they mean, but that is what they mean.
It is. It has to be. It's not.
If they try and say it isn't, just call them out and say, well, even if you're not using the words, you're still creating this whole us versus them thing, which you will get down to it. Who is us? Who is them? Well, I'll tell you who it is. It's men of all colors, but the darker it gets, the more frightened they get. The less frightened they pretend to be, but the more frightened they are inside.
Oh, and once you really see it, it is impossible not to notice that 9 out of 10 feminists are upper middle class white people. That's what most of them are. That is not a reason, of course, to hate white people. That is a reason to call them on their bullshit. Now, of course, there are black feminists and there are Hispanic feminists and whatever. It's amazing how few there are.
All right, can I nitpick a little bit?
Yeah.
All right. I noticed that you keep on using the word Hispanic, and this is going to be really petty, but I'm
Latino,
OCD right now. There are white
Latino.
Hispanics, there are black Hispanics, there are brown
All right,
Hispanics.
Latinos. All right, Latino. Whoa, whoa, whoa.
I'm sorry, I just got a
No, it's
nitpick.
okay. It's okay. What's the
Well,
right word for basically those brown-skinned Mexicans that we don't like?
that's what they call them, so I don't know.
I'm just joking, but you know what I mean. You get
Oh,
some.
I smell what you're stepping in. Yeah,
Yeah. Smell. No, please explain to me why the brown Mexicans rape and beat their women every day. Go on.
Oh well,
That's
they'll go ahead. They'll go ahead and give a Donald Trump answer. You know, just they do it a lot more subtly, but they'll still do it. They're like Donald Trump inside. You know.
Well, just don't give up on them, but or don't let up on them. Do not let up on them.
Yeah,
Be
well,
like, yeah.
I brought that up because there was an experience that I had last year in which a teacher of mine who claimed to be very progressive called a kid a liar when he said he was Hispanic because they said he didn't look Hispanic enough. And I'm just like, his last name is Del Flores, okay? You can't get more Hispanic than that. His name ends with an ES. And they're just like, and they're just like, nope, well, he's not, our stereotypical view. And I was just like, well.
I don't know what you see. That to me is the murkiness of some just generic of being too obsessed with identity politics. I mean, there is a place for something I call identity politics, and that's the real shame. Actually, I think there is a real place for identity politics. If you are part of a demographic that is being for real crapped on, then it's okay to say I'm part of this demographic that's being crapped on. But then, of course, you have these people who will take it to such an absurd level that their preferred demographic can do no wrong, and the enemy demographic can do no right, and that's where it becomes a big problem.
Well, look at what happened to the Black Panthers. They started out as we're going to end police brutality and we're going to help people and we're going to help the poor. And now you have the new Black Panthers who are pretty far from that.
Well, the old Black Panthers were actually worse. Huey Newton and those guys, now I'm starting to start really old. They were always a street gang who were hustling. They just were. Somebody can get mad at me for saying them. They were. Huey Newton was not a good man. But now we're getting really far afield. You asked the question, how do you get to be a men's rights activist, or should you be? Nobody should be or is required to do this.
No,
I do like the phrase. I really like to change the word activist to advocate, because at the current place we're at in the culture, activism and advocacy are almost one and the same. If you're wanting to change the culture, you be free with your opinions. And you will, there's this thing in psychology. It's called preference falsification. Have you ever heard of it?
I believe so. Isn't that like sort of similar to, the word's skipping on me, like
well, I'll just go ahead and explain.
Isn't it kind of similar to confirmation bias in a way?
Very similar, but it's almost the opposite of confirmation bias. Preference falsification is when you ask people's opinion about something, they lie to you. And they're usually lying to you because they're afraid to tell you what they really think. So they lie and give you the acceptable answer. Now, if you Google preference falsification, you'll find this. It's a standard, it's a thing in psychology. Large groups of people, and what can happen with preference falsification, especially when you get a regime, it could be a government, it could be a social milieu, whatever it is, you get a regime that is deeply unpopular, but everybody's afraid of it. They assume they know they hate the regime. Their immediate family and friends that they really trust kind of know they hate the regime, but they all nod and look at each other and say, I'm in trouble if I say anything. So they don't. And then what you'll see there, and this helps explain sudden revolutions in history, or what look like sudden revolutions, like the Berlin Wall coming down, like apartheid suddenly ending, big stuff like that, right?
Oh yeah,
there was a slow build up before that. A slow build.
Oh yeah.
Didn't seem to be doing anything, and all of a sudden, snap! There's a big change. What's happened is all the people who were lying about what they really thought look each other in the eye and realize that guy I don't even know thinks the same thing I do, and so does she, and so does she, and so does he, so does he. All of a sudden, there's a goddamn mob looking for the head of the dictator, and he doesn't know what happened because he thought he had this shit under control. But some event caused everybody to look at it and not just realize that they all think this, but that everybody else thinks it too.
Oh yeah.
I'm going to tell you right out, I'm engaged in making that happen. How much of it is me and how much of it is just cultural change, I don't know. But this is where my activism lies. Just in making it okay for people to stop lying about what they think. Just,
oh yeah.
And hey, it's things like, hey, my son doesn't need to be taught not to rape. Thank you. That's a men's rights activist statement right there.
Exactly.
It just is. If you want to change it to the word advocate because you don't go to any, you don't write to politicians or go to protests, that's fine. Change it to advocate. You're still an MRA. You don't need to be, though. You don't have to be in our club. This isn't a club. You don't take orders, but it needs to be just safe. No, my son's not a rapist. I'm not a rapist. My cousin's not a rapist. No, I don't think I'm entitled to women's bodies. By the way, I was sexually molested as a child. Is my experience less important than yours? Things like that, and put the culture on the back foot is the goal. So whether you're doing a YouTube or writing articles or making memes, or yes, joining some local group that's against circumcision or is against any of these other things, family court reform, prison reform, you can do all that and be a men's rights advocate, and you can put as much or as little time into it as you want. But you got to put this question out there. In fact, I would put this question out as much as you can. If you have no other question you ever publicly ask. And this is not just for you. I mean anybody listening. You got one question, and one question only that you want to put into the culture. Why is it? Here it is. Why is it not acceptable to talk about men's rights? And if they come back and they say this, that, or the other thing, just say, oh, well, so they're all being, they're not really right about anything? There, just keep doing that. And at some point, shit's going to flip. I've seen it flip over the last 5 years. You think there's a lot of hated MRAs now. You have no idea what it was like 5 years ago. It's better now.
Oh yeah, that's something that I've been sort of realizing, is that, well, I in my own social groups, I've been trying to get a lot more people into the whole MRA thing for a while, but then I started to realize that there were a lot of people who would say, who would agree with me on literally everything, would say, yeah, I agree that circumcision should be, anywhere from it should be either illegal to parents should know the consequences before they do it and be told the consequences before they do it, or they could turn around and say, no, I'm not a rapist, and they would agree with me on everything. But then I'd say, they'd be like, well, why are you an MRA? Like, what? And that used to sort of anger me. But then I sort of realized, does that really matter what they call themselves? I mean, they're still advocating for men's rights. So
exactly. And that's the right attitude. They got that famous quote by, oh God, what's her name? That hideous, hateful old bat. What the hell is her name? I don't know. She's famous for saying, if you're not a feminist, you're a bigot.
That's not Dworkin, is it?
No, I can see she's still.
That's just what I come up with when I hear bigoted old bat.
Yeah, I know. I was like, oh, Jermaine Greer? No, I can't remember her name. It doesn't matter because they say shit like this all the time. And it's like, I'm never going to say, if you're not an MRA, you're a bigot. No.
Gloria Allred, that was her name.
Gloria Allred, that was her. Yeah. I once heard a line, and I like that. That woman is so vile that she spits in the jars and sells it to pygmies so they can use it to poison the arrows that they hunt with.
You know what? I'm just going to start using that in everyday conversation.
Yeah. You should spit in jars so that you could sell it as poison for arrow tips. And you know what? The funny thing is, here's a humorless ideologue versus a regular person. If you said that to me, I'd have said, "Goddamn right, I'm planning to add some cyanide soon." If they said
you're
that
so
to me,
vile, your spit is banned on airlines.
I'm so vile, I can't even get onto a plane because they say my spit is a dangerous chemical. But
the metal. Spit on the just through the plane.
It's sort of like the acid that come out of the aliens in the Aliens movie. I don't want to fuck with that shit.
Someone stabs you and the knife just sort of melts away and you just look up at them like, what now? Now you got no knife.
But I think that's the other secret of it, is keep a sense of humor. Keep a sense of humor and, realize what you're doing is okay. It really is. You're not hurting anybody. You're actually helping people by making them think. Because when it comes to men's rights issues, these are real, dude. There are guys in jail now for the crime of not being able to pay their exes. And there's hundreds of thousands of them. There's probably more than 100,000 in California alone.
It's like in the Steve Shives video. Oh, well, female privilege is getting your door held open for you. And I'm like, no, I'd consider it something more like getting a loose court sentence for a serious crime.
Yes, thank you. Just keep saying things like that. A number of people will notice. And because that's like a shh. I mean, I've seen people say, well, just don't offend the women. Or don't, and I'm like, I see. So women are a special class of people who deserve not to be offended? I don't think so. But people are afraid of offending somebody. And it's like, okay, how much change do you think ever got made in the world without offending somebody? Really? I feel like I'm kind of drifting here, but, what is a men's rights activist? I know Sargon said he wanted to bring me on to talk about it sometimes, and it's like, are you talking about civil and human rights issues? Yes. Are you excluding anybody who's having their rights violated? No. Well, then you are an advocate for men's rights. I'm sorry, you just kind of are. You don't have to do it on everything. You don't have to make it define. It kind of defines my life because I do it more or less full time, but it doesn't need to be full time yours. In fact, I kind of wish it weren't mine, but it is. And going around and around in circles, it still comes down to change the culture. And that gets back to, I was saying, how do you defeat a politician? The number one thing to always remember, and I don't care how democratic your nation is and how much it tries to embody, even if you're like Swiss or Australian, we're both Americans, I think. Please tell me you're not another Canadian.
I'm not a Canadian, no.
Thank God I hate Canadians. No, actually, I'm joking.
That was out of nowhere.
I'm joking, but it's kind of weird. One of the things you'll notice in men's rights circles, like not just on YouTube, but online, there are a disproportionate number of men's rights advocates who are Canadian.
Oh, yeah.
For some reason,
it's bad up there.
It actually is, especially in the area of family law, but also in a few other areas like sex and sexual harassment and stuff. It's really bad up there.
Have you seen Evan Shaw's father tax video?
No, I should. Evan's a brilliantly funny guy. And by the way, I'm not going to call him an MRA. I don't know if he ever calls himself an MRA, but Evan Gelshaw's videos are devastatingly good MRA material. If you use the word A to mean advocate and you're talking the truth and not spinning, he's great. But anyway.
I think he's called himself an MRA. I'm not sure about that. It doesn't really matter though, because
no, it really doesn't. It really doesn't. In fact, I've had probably at this point hundreds of short conversations with people who say, well, I don't really like calling myself a men's rights advocate, and I'm like, or activist, and I say, oh, that's fine, don't. So what else did you want to say? And then they say something that's perfect MRA stuff. Like, okay. Exactly. Okay, you're not an MRA. I mean, Teal Deer, one of my favorite of all. That guy, he's a riot. In fact, TLDR may have become my favorite YouTuber over the last 6 months.
Yeah, he's pretty great.
He's not an MRA. He's never going to be an MRA. You could tell his personality. If I tried to say, I want you to be one, his answer would be, see if I can practice this. No. Okay, I didn't say it very well, but he'd say it like that. No. And that would be fine. It doesn't matter. You don't have to be. It's not a club. But to the issue of politicians, no matter how nice the politician is, no matter how intelligent the politician is, no matter how thoughtful the politician is, no matter if the politician personally agrees with every stinking word you just said, what is the politician's first priority?
Getting reelected.
Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, I got that right? I was trying to make a joke.
You got that? Oh, no, you got it 100% right. And in fact, if you don't internalize that, you're a fool who will never accomplish anything in politics. There is only one thing that is truly important to any politician, that is getting reelected. Number two is everything else he ever says or does, he or she. That's always number two, maybe number three or number four. The only time you may say as an exception is that a politician's about to retire. And even then, they're usually doing something pretty mundane.
Or Supreme Court justice.
Something like that. Yeah.
I wouldn't call them politicians, though. They're more of judges.
Yeah. But, I mean, even them, those judges, let's say you hate a particular judge. Maybe you hate Scalia, or maybe you hate Kennedy. I don't fucking care. Those are really smart fucking people. You're probably not going to say anything they haven't thought of or heard. Maybe you will. That's not what they're there for, you know. But anyway, so the politician, and even to an extent the business owner, no, I'd say the business owner too, what they need to get for you to truly get them to change something is make them afraid for their jobs. Flat out. Straight up make them afraid of their jobs. For their jobs, I mean. Afraid they're going to lose them. That fear motivates them better than anything else, no matter how much passion you have, how obviously right you are with the math. If they're not afraid they're going to lose their jobs if they don't listen, they probably won't listen. No matter how nice they seem to be, and they probably are genuinely nice. The system is set so they can't keep their jobs if they don't act a certain way. It's a requirement of the job to do what the voters will accept. So, what is the real task to change? There's two ways to do it. First, you change the culture, or this is the other thing some men's rights activists do. I've done it a few times. Target a politician and see if you can get the voters or their superiors to fire that politician. Is that fair? I didn't say anything about fair. It's about what it takes to get change.
Effective.
You make one politician, you make an example of her or him. You don't just get that politician's attention. And by the way, just scaring the politician is enough. You don't actually have to get them fired. Make them scared. And not only will, and again, not scared for their lives, scared for their jobs.
What's her face? Mustafa. Like,
yeah, make them scared for their jobs.
She hasn't said anything ever since she almost got fired. What's she been doing?
They need to be scared for their jobs. And then what happens, I know this sounds very Machiavellian, but this is the real world and how it works. Not only is that particular nasty person cowed, but everybody standing next to him is. In fact, you know a politician is really in trouble when nobody will stand next to him because they don't want the splash damage. Even when that happens, you've gotten through to the entire political establishment. Oh, they went after Elizabeth, or they went after John, or whatever. I might be next. Maybe I better pay a little more attention.
That's what happened with the Confederate flag, is that people, even people who probably wouldn't care to take it down, people start to realize that if they don't start taking action about the Confederate flags in the state houses, that their jobs are threatened.
Yeah, wherever you stand on the Confederate flag, and for the record, you believe this or you don't, but I swear to God, I cannot think of an issue I care less about in politics right now. Shut up about the fucking flag. So now I hate you because you made me bring it up, right? But
I don't think it's that big of a deal.
Here's the bottom line. What some people do, and fine, love them for it. How did they get it done? They scared the fuck out of the people who said, they didn't want, who said they wanted to keep the flag. They scared the politicians. They scared the politicians, not the everyday people, the politicians. The politicians said, fuck, we're in trouble. We better do this. It's what works. We better get rid of this flag, blah, blah, blah. It doesn't look good, blah, blah, blah. That's how you do it. And it doesn't have to be fair. It's how the system's designed. So I'll get that one from people sometimes too. Well, you're just contributing to the call-out culture and to the rage of our politics. And I'm like, yeah, because that's how it works right now. Now, I got about 50 ideas I can hit you with to reform the political system so that it doesn't have to be that way. We'll be talking about a constitutional rewrite, though. Are you ready to go there? Until you are, these are the rules that are in place, motherfucker. I didn't make them. I play by them. And yeah, that requires getting in people's faces sometimes. I don't even like, anyway, I think I'm repeating myself. So, but yeah, I already know there's people out there telling me I'm screwing up because I started this hashtag called Spank-A-Feminist.
Oh yeah, I was sort of wondering about that. I was like, okay, I've never been on that hashtag before, but people are going to be mad.
Good. Go hit the hashtag for me. And if you're listening, go hit the hashtag. And furthermore, go read that hashtag. I'm asking all listeners of Mr. MrMinibagel here. Andy said, right?
Yep, there we go.
Go look at the Spank-A-Feminist hashtag. And if you basically are a fan of MrMinibagel here, I'm Andy. I will suggest that if you actually spend about 10 minutes like really looking at that hashtag, if you can come out of that hashtag in 10 minutes and not be laughing your ass off, you are a humorless old biddy. Because I've posted a few hundreds of things actually myself into that, but so many other people have posted to that hashtag, and it really boils down, you'll get one or two assholes, right, who are really saying some stupid vile shit, and you figure some of them may even be, some of them may be deranged, some of them may be socks, who cares? They're like 2% or less. Otherwise, all you'll see is wailing, petulant feminists and women, men, gay guys, black people, whatever, saying, for doing this, Spank-A-Feminist, for doing that, Spank-A-Feminist. And it's very clear, it's intellectual spanking. And just mocking the shit out of them. And that's what it is. I didn't start the hashtag. A guy, I don't even know his real name. He goes by Date Off Campus. He started it. And there's comedy gold in there. Somebody, I'm letting you know, I'm going to tell, if anybody else is listening to this, like V. Monroe or Tiltier, well, he won't because he's too, I don't know, Sargon, any of those people, go read that fucking hashtag. I'm really proud of it. It's funny. And part of it is when the Date Off Campus guy came up with Spank-A-Feminist, I thought that people are going to take that wrong. And then a feminist said something wrong to me. I said, bitch, you need a spanking. And I started, and the hashtag exploded. The gay guys are the funniest ones. Of course, they usually are. But the gay guys are hysterical. Go look, it's fun, and just retweet things. It's fun and it's funny. Oh, making fun of my sexuality again? Spank-A-Feminist. Making up lies about the rage gap again? Spank-A-Feminist. Oh, rape culture? Yeah, Spank-A-Feminist. Go.
I'm looking at it right now, and there's actually some pretty funny stuff in there.
It is. It's funny. And they're all going, rape, violence. And I'm like, what? Spanking is between consenting adults. Don't you understand consent? Spank-A-Feminist. You consented by posting here, baby. Spank-A-Feminist. Yeah.
Well, it's like how there was this hashtag, like right before like the Elliot Rodger thing happened. There was a hashtag called Jada Pose. We're a bunch of like asshole high schooler kids took like a pose of some girl who got raped on the news. And you know what? Screw them. They're jerks. But then you know what happened? Like 4 of them tweeted it. And then some feminist advocacy group found it. I think it was like Jezebel posted something about it. And they started freaking out, and then it started trending, and then they started freaking out about how it was trending. And like, well, clearly this is the fact that this is trending is proof of rape culture. And it's like, you're the ones who trended it.
When Spankafeminist began trending, and it's not trending anymore, and it doesn't necessarily need to, you can still keep using it because there's dynamite in there. There's some awesome graphics. There's some hilarious one-liners. There's some really good research that people are putting in there. And the people who don't like it are just completely flummoxed. The Mary Sue attacked the hashtag. Several other feminist sites attached the hashtag. One feminist actually said, we should have no doubt. This is the patriarchy. This is the oppression we have been fighting all along.
Oh my.
Really? A hashtag called spank. I would have spanked you, little girl, just for being that stupid.
Well,
they declared it the thing we all had to align against is Spankafeminist. I'm pretty sure the people at support probably got hundreds of complaints.
Well, they get mad.
And I'm sitting there thinking, who's the guy on Twitter or the chick in charge, whatever, who's going to say, yeah, we got to do something. There's spank threats. We must act.
Hey, stop spank shaming, okay?
It's rampant spank threats all over the internet. Stop this.
Check your spanking privilege.
That's right. But if you want to talk about activism of a sort, yes, it's hashtag activism. Okay, and yeah, maybe it's slacktivism. What you're doing with that stuff is undermining the popular narrative. And even the people who are annoyed walk away. Some of them closed-minded, but others will be like, they were such assholes. But all right, maybe they had a point about one or two things, but they're still assholes.
Well,
okay.
They still realize that they had a point, so that's what matters.
It is. It is. And it's dirty and it's messy, but it's fun. Because if you look at the history of politics, it is filled with brash, sometimes angry, or just playing funny jokes. Look how Andrew Jackson became president. He was not a good man.
I was about to bring that up. People act like smear politics are a new thing. No, they've been around since John Quincy Adams and Andrew Jackson.
That's correct. Now, I don't necessarily believe in smears of the lying kind, but
humor
questioning, humor, even harsh humor. You're fat, you're ugly, you smell bad, go away.
Oh.
They do it to us. So I mean, I did a whole series of tweets on male feminists, and I know that'll get their goats too. Oh, poor male feminists. Ugly, insecure, can't get laid, projecting that onto MRAs. Spank a feminist.
They wish they could, but they can't.
You fight fire with fire until they call ceasefire.
Oh, but they never will. Here's the thing, though. They complain about things like spank a feminist when it is in all clearness. You look at those tweets for 5 minutes, 5 seconds, and you realize no one is taking it seriously. No one actually wants to find people and spank them.
Who's gonna do that?
Exactly.
Who's the roving bands of spankers wandering around the globe?
It's sort of like how in SpongeBob they have the bubble popping boys. It's the feminist spanker boys. They just walk around town with yaoi paddles. Like, hey, we heard that there's some people who are in need of a spanking.
Exactly.
But you see, the thing is that they will complain about things that are the most clear irony or jokes, but then they do things that are completely serious. And when people call them out on it, they try and go, "We were joking, come on." And it's ridiculous. And then you have things that they will even state are serious. Like, you remember when Kill All Men became a thing for a while?
Yeah, and my first reaction to it actually was not anger. It was like, okay, it's funny. I can take a joke. But then
I realized that half the people in there weren't joking.
No, there really aren't. It's terrible. Oh, while I'm here, I'm going to pimp my other new favorite hashtag of the moment, Gays Against Feminism. What a great hashtag, Gays Against Feminism. Those are some wicked mean fags. they will tear a feminist apart in 2 seconds, and they can't say anything because it's gay men half the time, you know, including a number of black gay men and Hispanic gay men. And
oh, well, that's the thing,
girlfriend, you do not want to get in on the snark of a gay man because he will not let you go ever.
Well, that's the thing. Well, I want to do a video where what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna come up and start saying mean things in public against feminism and see what I do, and then make up some BS about how I'm the most disadvantaged person on the planet, about how I am a disabled, trans, pansexual dogkin or something, then see how their reaction changes.
Yeah, and some would go, is this behavior we're discussing at this moment? Hashtag activism and gays against feminism, all that shit. Is this juvenile?
Maybe. Who cares?
Yeah. Yes. Thank you. That is the correct answer. Are you having fun? Number one, are you having fun? Yes. Number two, are you truly harming anybody? Number three, if you're hurting somebody's feelings, is there a good reason for it? And if you can say yes to these three things, go spank a feminist. Go make a YouTube video. Talk to your friends. You know, you don't have to make everything in your life about this. You think I sit around talking with my friends about men's rights issues? That is probably 3% of my conversation with my friends. Otherwise we're talking about video games, we're talking about TV shows that we like, we're talking about books, we're talking about life philosophy. I'm a human being, and I will give you that as a piece of advice too, just for you alone.
MRAs are people too.
Yes. Although you're kind of in a weird place with having your own YouTube channel, because a YouTube channel has to sort of specialize on something for it to get any kind of traction.
Yeah.
For the most part. It's got to have a sort of a recognizable style that people are familiar with. But at the same time, you really need to show your human side, because if all you are is a monolithic, I'm a men's rights activist, that's all they see. So they're going to say somebody's going to criticize feminism a lot, or he's going to talk to me some more about some shit I'm tired of hearing, like domestic violence, or you know, the sentencing disparity for women. I don't want to hear that shit. And he's just a one-trick pony. No, what are your other hobbies? Mention them, show them, talk, joke with people, laugh at people. Fucking laugh at your opponents in a nice way. I had a feminist zing me recently with a really good zinger. I'm gonna have to remember what it was, but it doesn't matter. The immediate response was a non-sarcastic, good one. Points, respect. I showed them sportsmanship. They appeared to have no idea what to do with that. Just like they generally have very little idea what to do when you go, oh, that's a good point, I hadn't thought of that.
Well, it reminds me of something. Have you ever read the book Nectar in a Sieve?
Who's the author?
I don't remember her name, but I believe it was kind of an autobiography. It's about a woman in India who struggles with her family and feeding it during famines and stuff. But there's a point where this one another woman who is a prostitute thinks that she is cheating on her husband because she goes and sees a doctor sometimes about gynecology. And so if you think about it, it's like, oh, well, why would someone assume that? And it kind of, don't worry, I'm going to bring it back to this.
Sure.
It's because people kind of assume that everyone is like them and that they would do what, you know. And do you think that person you were talking to, would they have said good job if you had said a zing to them? Maybe.
No. Well, maybe.
Probably not, but maybe. But if they reacted in a way where it's like, why are you like that? Why are you doing that? Why'd you say that? Then probably they wouldn't.
Yeah. And I know we're not. See, here's the thing: you can't talk about men's rights activism without talking about feminism. It can't be done at this point. It really can't. Only because there's so much in the popular culture from feminists calling men and boys privileged that you like almost can't talk about anything without talking about the people who are pushing out that fake message.
And people believe it.
I wish, honestly, that I could just go be an advocate for male domestic violence victims, which did for many years, by the way, before I got into this kind of more public, more in-your-face advocacy. I forgot what I was saying.
You have to be an anti-feminist to be an MRA.
You almost have to, because once you start talking about, for example, male genital mutilation, i.e. circumcision. Now that's a real tough one, because it's not just a feminist issue. It's not just feminists who talk about it. A lot of people do. But what is probably, other than trying to rationalize circumcision as good, what is probably the most frequent criticism of bringing up the medical issues surrounding circumcision?
They like to say FGM is worse.
Right.
And that pisses me off so much.
And
it's like, oh, you got raped in the vagina? Well, you should be grateful that you didn't get raped in the anus. That would have been worse. It's like, so what? You still got raped.
Yes, that you're correct. And it is almost always a feminist or somebody very feminist friendly who says something like this, because they're prioritizing women over men. And so it's like you almost have to say something. Thank you for the feminist perspective. Now, are we really going to talk about this? Male domestic violence victims. Well, women are way more the victims of domestic violence than men are. And the only response to that is those are bogus feminist statistics. They just are. And they are feminist statistics because you have feminists in government, in universities, crafting these things. It's not true that men beat their women more and it's not true that men beat their children more. In fact, most child abuse is committed by women, not men, which does not make women child abusers, because it's something like 70% of child abuse is committed by women. But even then, that doesn't mean women are worse. They're more single mothers. There's multiple factors. But the bottom line is the public myth.
All women.
That's right. You don't want to hold it against all women, because that's totally wrong. You do want to hold it against the people who refuse to hold women accountable, though. And who's that?
I'll need to say it.
Yeah. So it's like you can't do it. Well, you can. I know some actual working activists who do things like go to state houses or work for the Congress, working Congress or whatever. They don't offend feminists because they don't never say the word feminist. Or they even have to say things like, well, yes, we definitely believe in the feminist movement toward equality. Now they have to say that. We don't. We really don't, and we shouldn't. The people putting out the fake statistics on rape are feminists. The people putting out the fake statistics on domestic violence are feminists. The people putting out the fake statistics on male abuse of children are feminists. That's who they are. And they deserve to be identified. So I guess I'm still wondering again, but it's like, what's the difference between an MRA and an anti-feminist? I would guess the biggest is that the MRA actually cares that there are boys being mistreated in the school system. And I hear stories all the time about boys being mistreated in the school system. Or in the court system, or in the workplace, or whatever. You could just talk about those things. But I think it's important to identify what mentalities and what ideologies are behind those things. And it's frequently feminists. Although I like to say if feminism disappears tomorrow, men will still have tons of issues.
Well, yeah, of course. Like, here's a quote by me. I'm going to use this right now. I just came up with this. Traditionalism writes the rules, feminism enforces them. I mean,
that's a really good line. How old are you?
16.
Oh, you kid. Oh, my God. You're younger than my son. I hate you. I'm going. No, but okay. we've never spoken before. You're not a brainwashed little tool in a cult. I don't know where you got your information, but it's all correct. So you must have gotten it from somewhere, and it probably wasn't all me. So, yeah.
Well, if I'm going to be completely honest, I haven't read a lot of your stuff because I'm very impatient. And although when I do read your articles, I like them, I don't have the patience to read articles all that often.
That's why you're a YouTuber. Nothing wrong with that. Yeah, actually, that's just a general philosophical thing, too. Some people like reading and writing. Some people don't. And you know what? And that's bad because not. You know, it's like finding out that more women want to be nurses and teachers than want to be engineers. And this is bad because reasons.
Don't worry about it. They're out there.
But so, you know, it's like, okay, you don't read, that's fine. You don't have to. But yeah, the information is there and verifiable. And the more you put it out there, the more that, you know, people are forced to think about it. You don't have to change the minds of the people you're arguing with. Change the minds of the people who are watching.
Oh, yeah.
Do you know why I'll never get into an email debate with a feminist?
It won't.
Because no one else will see it.
And because it won't end.
And it won't end.
It won't end without
it will not end.
Accused of harassment.
They will not stay on topic. They will not stay on topic. They won't, and you will have wasted all that energy trying to talk to the unpersuadable. No. And this is where I disagree with. This is where I strongly disagree with some of the better and more respectable MGTOW thinkers. Now, some of them AVFM doesn't get along with because there's like a personal animosity there, which I'm sorry about. I wish it weren't there, but some of the better MGTOW thinkers, like I think Barbarossa and Stardust and a few others, have declared it's totally a waste of time to argue with feminists. And they're dead wrong. They're wrong in every way.
Oh, yeah. Well,
they're missing one thing. They're missing things. The main thing is don't waste your time arguing with a feminist if it's in private. And don't waste your time arguing with a feminist if you're going to lose your temper. That's it. There is otherwise no downside if you can keep your sense of humor and never lose your shit. Well, except for a really well-deserved, you know, 1% of the time, rage is the appropriate response. But if you otherwise keep your head cool, and be funny and be human, it doesn't matter if the feminist walks away unconvinced. If other people saw that, they're going to decide who's the crazy one.
Oh, yeah, like that time that you were on, I don't remember what station it was, but I saw an interview, and I saw that actually you were the one in it, and I was like, oh, I'm going to watch this. It was called, like, well, there was a YouTube video. It was called, like, MRA argues with feminists or something generic like that.
Didn't Amazing Atheist use that thing?
I don't...
it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I've been on a few television shows, so whatever it was.
A legitimate, like, news show.
Yeah.
But I noticed, and I was watching this, and I was saying, wow, this was before I'd even heard of you, I think. I was like, wow, this Dean Esmay guy is right. And they're not. I don't care if they get convinced or not. The video was had like a 90% approval rating, so people were convinced.
Yes.
Who cares if the people you were debating were convinced? You never debate to convince the person you're debating. You're debating to convince the spectators.
Yes. Yes. And if you have wandered away from a contact at wondering who looked the craziest, it was probably you, and don't do that again. If you can make yourself never look crazy, or rarely look crazy, you will have done some good. You really will. Because you've not only made them think about feminism and why there's problems with it, but you've also drawn attention to the fact that what they're actually saying is usually the opposite of the truth, and that there are actually little boys as well as grown men being hurt by the shit they're saying.
Yeah.
And they'll hear you. So, no, argue with feminists. Do it right. Do it smart.
Do it in public.
And do it in public. Every time. Feminist asks to speak to you privately, there is only one way to do it. One reason to accept a request for a private conversation with a feminist. And that is if you have good reason to think they really have a personal issue they want to talk to you about, or they're actually thinking they may be changing their minds. and they want some, like, I got a few feminist friends who've come to me privately and said, I'm having, these bitches are all over me. I made a statement they didn't like. Can you advise me? And I'll quietly advise them on how, you know, like a feminist girl recently that I'm friendly with recently, she has a gypsy ethnic background, her whole family, right? And I don't know if you know this, but it's now politically incorrect to use the term gypsy.
Yeah.
You're not supposed to call somebody that.
No.
Roma, not Roma.
Well,
and
yeah,
yes,
whatever.
And yes, by the way, yes, well, they're called the Roma. And yes, the people living in Romania probably find that a little annoying, as do some of the Italians, because what it actually means is Roman.
Yeah, they're different ethnicities. It's Italian.
But they're a specific demographic. You're supposed to call them the Roma. And she's like, her feminist friends, her social justice friends were all over her because she said she liked the word gypsy better. She thought it was cooler, and she was proud of it. And they were yelling at her and instructing her that if she was the real deal, she would never use the word gypsy again. And she said, you know, and there was this horrible story she sent me of a group of people who lynched and burned a gypsy man on a false rape allegation. I said, and they were mocking her for bringing it up. So I immediately, I posted it. How would I not? It's a false rape allegation of a man who got brutally lynched in Europe on a false rape allegation, an admittedly false rape allegation. Her feminist friends were mad at her for putting it up, and they were mad at her for using the word gypsy. So not only did I put it up, but I tweeted her a couple of songs that she promptly retweeted, which all had gypsy in the title, and she was bragging about how much she loved it. You know what? That was a little bit of feminist subversion there. She may still call herself a feminist, but I backed her up because she was right, and that's all I had to do.
Yeah. Well, it's like, that reminds me of this thing where there's a video online. I don't remember what it was called, but it was all these guys, these Kenyan guys, you know, they live in Kenya. They lived in Nairobi, I think, and they were making fun of all the American tourists who called them African American because they weren't American.
I've seen Americans do that. It's so funny. But go ahead, sorry.
No, it's just hilarious. And it's the same thing with like how there's this one guy, he was from Portugal, but he didn't look Portuguese. He looked like the traditional Mexican, you know? He was very dark for a Portuguese guy. But people kept calling him Hispanic, and he's like, no, I'm not Hispanic. I'm from
Portuguese.
Portugal. Yeah. Right. And he wasn't just a Portuguese ancestry. No, he was like straight up born in Lisbon, you know? And so it was really fun, you know, because it was all these people who were trying so hard to be politically correct that they were just being not politically incorrect, just straight up factually incorrect.
Factually incorrect and aggressively obnoxious about it.
Exactly.
Which is one of my favorite phrases, and I use it a lot. And again, I accuse people of this, and they say, nah, but others are reading and they can go, It's a great phrase, aggressive ignorance. I don't know the truth, but I'm going to tell you what it is anyway. And I'm not going to let your facts get in my way, motherfucker. And that's aggressive ignorance. And aggressive ignorance, by the way, is the root of all prejudice. In fact, it is pretty much the definition of what prejudice is. It's the worst kind of prejudice. I've already decided I know. I don't need to think anymore. That's what prejudice is.
Well, when people make an argument where they're like, I'm not an expert, but, and then they proceed to act like they are an expert, and it's like, no.
But you're not an expert, and let me tell you, you're wrong about X, Y, and Z. Fuck you, blah, blah, blah. No, you're just factually incorrect. Now you're being an aggressively ignorant moron. I'm sorry if that's harsh. I'm sorry if that even makes you want to punch me. You're being an aggressively ignorant moron, and I can tell you why. Here's the facts. You know, and yeah, human beings haven't changed that much. This is what I believe. If you think we're a species and we've inherited certain traits, those traits lead to things. They do lead to racial prejudice. They do lead to sexism. They do lead to lynch mobs and all that. Those things were in human beings 500 years ago. Why do you think they're not still with human beings now? All that potential is there still because they're just human beings. Like, we think of the Nazis as an incomprehensible thing that just totally took apart, totally took over Germany and then tried to take over the world and Holocaust and all that. Every day, these people were everyday people you could meet today out on the street. They were. What makes you think the people walking the streets today are different? Am I making sense there? And I'm not saying the people walking the streets are Nazis. I'm saying things were in the human man.
Perfect sense.
Yes, something in the human animal made Nazis happen. Otherwise, they wouldn't be there. Something in the human animal made communism happen. Otherwise, it wouldn't have. So we're still the same species that lynches. We're still the same species that mobs people. We're still the same species that hates based on stupid things like race and skin color and sex. Although I don't think, and sex, I'm going to try and qualify it, but we're still that same people. We're still the same people who was ready to shoot the Jews. We're still the people who were ready to burn heretics at the stake. We're those same people. You get that, right? So the only way out of it is to force people to think.
Well, here's a real positive side effect of civilized society, even though it doesn't always work. And this, I mean, I suppose modern society would be more appropriate than civilized society, is that we have pressures from society holding people back from doing that thing, where I'm sure that if we still lived in the 60s, then a lot of people that live near me would be very openly racist. But because of the society that they live in, they would never admit it. But I'm sure that they would be if they could.
Exactly. And I don't think necessarily people need to be shunned for having them, but they should have to live with the fact that their ideas can be challenged just like anybody else's, just like mine. In fact, you know what my proof will be that I won as a men's rights activist sometime in the next, I don't know, decade or two? I hope it doesn't take that long, but it might. If somebody can look up and come to me and prove that whatever I've been doing recently was... No, I'm not saying this right. I got to make sure I say it right. If somebody can properly identify me as the asshole who's abusing his power, then it's not only time for me to quit, but it's also time that I won. Because right now, I have a real luxury. I have the luxury of being right about everything. I really do. And it's a luxury you have too. You have the luxury of being right about 90 to 95% of the time. When you talk about these issues, because you've looked at the stats, you've looked at what intelligent people think, you've looked for the counter arguments. Have you noticed how there's a distinct lack of really solid counter arguments? In a very real way, that is a benefit, because you can have a confidence level they can never have. Do you see what I'm saying there?
Oh, I know what you mean.
I can tell you flat out. Yep, go ahead.
The best part is when you have people, especially feminists do this all the time, where they don't even know who they're arguing against. They treat me like I'm some sort of traditionalist nut job, and that I'm a big fan of traditionalism when I'm not. And that's what I think they're debating, but they're not. I'm actually somewhat progressive in all literal senses of what the word should mean, not the actions that it's taking right now. In all literal senses of the word, I am progressive as fuck. But I don't like what people are doing in the name of progressivism right now. But they don't take that as meaning this guy would like what I was doing if I wasn't doing such awful things. They take that as saying, oh, this guy hates women, or this guy likes rapists. You know, that's what they think. They don't take it when I say men can be raped as well as women. They don't take that as saying, oh, okay, this guy is advocating for rape victims. They take that as being, oh, he's saying that when women get raped, it's because of what they were wearing, when that has nothing to do with what I was saying.
I know.
They don't even agree with themselves on who they're debating against.
And by the way, while it's probably not bad advice to ask girls to, or guys for that matter, to kind of watch what they dress, there's no real evidence that that's more than a minor thing when it comes to rape.
Yeah.
Anyway, I gotta go soon, but I want to get this out there. Okay, you say you're pretty progressive, and this will be a generic statement for any of your friends who consider themselves liberal, leftist, whatever. With any movement, well, any political philosophy, you name it, conservatism, libertarianism, liberal, socialist, whatever, wherever you're at in sort of a political movement, there will eventually be bad actors. And shit, I'm sorry, I forgot what point I was going to make. It seemed profound. I'm getting old. There will always be bad actors. And what was I saying just before that? I know your audience is laughing at me. What was I saying before that?
What audience? There's 4 people watching.
Oh, no, this is going up on AVFM, so help me out here. What did I say?
I don't know, but since you have to go.
No, here it is. Let's say you are a member of some political tribe. All right, you may not. Let's say you call yourself a liberal man of the left, or woman of the left, or right or progressive. Every movement eventually has to purge itself of bad actors within it. The Democratic Party in 1948, Harry Truman had just gotten the Democratic nomination that year, but there was a segregationist wing of the Democratic Party that called themselves the Dixiecrats. A guy named Strom Thurmond was in charge of that. He was a senator.
Well, that's when there were 2 Democratic parties, North and South.
Sort of, yeah. But let's stick with this. Strom Thurmond said that Harry Truman is not like the greatest civil rights hero forever, but he had some, sympathies that went the right way, and he would not get behind a pro-segregation plank at the convention, and the Dixiecrats said, "We'll walk if you don't let that segregation plank in there." And Harry Truman said, "Then walk." And they did. And he went on to win the presidency, and the Democratic Party became stronger because of it. A similar thing happened in that era, maybe a little later, maybe a few years later, maybe 10 years later. The Republican Party had a problem with the John Birch Society, which is an anti-communist organization, which is good because communists were bad people just like fascists were at that time in the world anyway. But the John Birchers were loony. I mean, Looney Tunes loony. And
like
they
McCarthyists?
Yeah, pretty much. In fact, you go to the John Birch Society webpage now, and you just go ahead and read that stuff, and you go ahead and enjoy that, and and even if you're like a progressive anti-communist, you'll be like, yeah, what? Because they're nuts.
To be honest, whenever I see MGTOW posts, I do the same thing. Yeah, that's good. Oh.
There's some really smart MGTOW out there. I will not.
Oh yeah.
But there's some crazy MGTOW out there too. I'm sorry, there just is. But anyway, yeah, and the Republicans were like, you may be part of the Republicans, or you may be a John Bircher. You may not be both. And the John Birchers didn't like it, but guess what? They were shown the door. Although it will take some work and some guts. Liberals, you have a problem. You need to ask these people to walk out the door. And they're the feminists. And they scare you. And the fact that scares you so much is one of the reasons why you need to invite them to use the door and not let them hit them on the ass on the way out. Or do let it hit them on the ass on the way out. Tell these hateful, feminist, horrible people, men and women alike, calling themselves feminists, tell them, get out! Tell them to get out. That's what I think you need to do on the left to get a revitalized left that actually speaks up for the average person. Because the left has abandoned the working man and his family, and they're paying for it. There you go.
Well, fortunately, at least we're trying to see guys. I mean, we're sort of seeing that similar theme in this current upcoming election in 2016. We're seeing neoconservatives versus classical conservatives, and classical liberals versus neoliberals when it comes to Bernie Sanders versus Hillary Clinton. where Sanders is more classical, Hillary is more of a neoliberal type.
Oh, but Bernie's a straight up socialist, and I'm definitely not one. I intend personally, I am not speaking for the Voice for Men community or the men's rights movement. Me personally, Dean Esmay will vote in the Democratic primary when it hits Michigan, and I will vote for Bernie Sanders if I don't get a viable alternative to Hillary. And I think more people who consider themselves Democrats need to say that.
That's what I'm doing.
And furthermore, if you are a Republican MRA, let's pretend you're a Republican MRA. Let's say you're such a Republican MRA that you're going to leave comments for Senor MrMinibagel here, calling him a collectivist, a socialist, a dupe to the very people who created everything wrong with us. Why are you wasting your energy arguing with him? Go tell your fellow Republicans that you need to, go challenge your fellow Republicans and go challenge your for the right wingers to do a good job. And then maybe we'll get leftists and rightists who all are at least able to look at each other and say, we should stop treating our sons like garbage.
Exactly.
While we're arguing.
And that's my big thing. I like videos where they make. I like Bill Maher. I also, because he makes fun of both the right and the left. To be honest, he makes fun of the right a bit more, but he does make fun of the left as well, and people don't realize that sometimes, but he does. And they both have problems that they both need to address, and whoever does it first is gonna be who comes out on top for this era. And since I believe you said you had to go soon, I'm going to close out the show with this statement before I just let you close it out, because that's the polite thing to do.
Okay.
Let's just say I think that the MRM is going to be on the right side of history, because the ones who are on the right side of history are the ones who want to give people more rights, and the ones who are on the wrong side are the ones who want to take them away.
That, sir, doesn't need any further comment. My final comment is what he just said.
Actually, my final comment is that if you guys want to support A Voice for Men, which is what this guy, Dean, writes for, then go ahead and go to patreon.com/A Voice for Men. I believe that's the link.
Oh, do we have we got Patreon finally working? We needed to get that done. We would love to see your Patreonage. And we also have ways on avoiceformen.com that you can give to. Your money, yes, it will be used to help pay for expenses. Yes, it will help pay for some volunteers. Yes, it will help pay for some travel expenses.
Plus, website hosting is really expensive.
It's not, although you'd be shocked. We have some really powerful servers and some really talented and incredibly hard work being done. You could not get the kind of hosting we have probably for $1,000 a month. You probably could not. And I'm not exaggerating. We can handle the kind of traffic on our site that somebody like Time or Newsweek, we have comparable traffic and we can handle it because we have such good people working those servers.
Damn.
No, we really are that big. People, I mean, yeah, on a bad month, last year we did almost 9 million visits. We expect to finish 10 this year. You're not going to get that on a $30 a month hosting plan and have any decent. But you know what? We said we were done, and now I'm talking about AVFM.
Oh, it's all right.
People ask, look at the money we're making. That's enough to pay maybe 2-3 people. And it's otherwise what we do. It really is activism. It's a publication. We love to accept your donations, just like you'd accept any Patreon money. So thanks a lot.
On here.
Have a good one. It was an honor.